Running has exploded in popularity, especially among Gen Z and millennials. Our parents used to just throw on an old tee and run out the door, but now we all have elaborate 8-step morning routines just to get out the door.
Hate these.
Which we have to document for Instagram. Myself included, guilty. This girl right here, guilty. People aren't going to the club anymore. They're going to run clubs to meet people to date. But why are so many people born in the 90s lacing up their sneakers? I have a sneaky suspicion I know why, and today I'm spilling that sneaky suspicion. Sip the tea. I ironically have 13 reasons. Make the joke you want with that. Starting with reason number 1, the fake fitness lifestyle. There was a lot of posing in the 2010s. We have to flash back to early 2010s Instagram. Weightlifting got really in. It was not to make everything about women's body types, but what was in? The Kardashian, the BBL started, the really hourglass. And with that, women also started to realize one way to get your glutes bigger was to work out. Insert weightlifting culture. And with that, and especially with like the Kardashians being the prime example, just this focus on women's butt, it all became about our glutes. My entire life was based around for several years of just like, how can I get my butt bigger? And at this time, we just had Instagram, like 2012, 2015, it was just photos. There was no videos, there was no reels, it was just photos. So it really didn't matter how good you were at fitness. It just mattered how you looked. Big butt, likes, engagement, fitness influencer. Like it was just about the photo, nothing else. Now, with weightlifting becoming so in, like anything, we took it to the extreme. And it almost became like an anti-cardio for a while because there was this belief, especially it was like an underlying tone of like bodybuilding culture. Like why burn calories? Like there's no reason, you're just burning extra calories and those calories could be going towards your glutes. And it was very much like, don't lose gains at any rate possible. And that was just definitely the feel of fitness online. And there was no talk about cardio for just longevity and health reasons. I think there was just a really big emphasis on aesthetics, not performance or health. And with that, I know myself, even like I got caught into like the bodybuilding world and I had this moment, this aha moment was like, I looked the most fit I ever had and I was the most unfit. Like I was an athlete growing up. And suddenly I've just been spending the last few years training so I can take a photo to look athletic and I'm not athletic. Speaking of former athlete, reason number 2, post-career syndrome and just post-college in general. Older Gen Z, younger millennials have recently all graduated college / have just graduated high school. And I feel there's a real big loss of community. I know for myself, when sports ended, I just felt lost. There was like nothing to train for. Why train? There's nothing to train for. Also, I didn't have practice. I didn't have a team to be around. And I think a lot of people played high school sports or had a hobby in high school. They go on to college and suddenly they feel lost. On the flip side, sometimes in college, you're in a sorority, you're on a team, you're in intramurals, you have your group, you go to the lunch and you lose that when you go to find your corporate job. And so there's just a lot of moments for Gen Z and millennials recently of like losing what I would deem third places. A third place is great because you go and you'll just ironically run into friends. College is great for that. High school is great for that. And it's just a lot of people I think crave that. And especially when you're finding your routine in college, is like a place you go to and you just run into your friends, like a cafeteria. I think that's really lacking. And I'm slowly leaning into painting this picture. We kind of have to go back in history and I will tie these reasons how they're the conclusion to why running's so in, but just realize in the 2010s, hyperfixation on weightlifting and loss of third places for a lot of Gen Z and millennials. And on top of that, this is more of a specific niche, but a niche that's really high in running is I think there's a lot of people who've spent their entire lives training for something and it's ripped away from them. I'd spent my entire life training for basketball and once college basketball was done, I was like, oh, so you just like work out? That seems weird. Like, no, you train for practice. You practice for a game. So you just like go to the gym? And there's a definite just like loss of identity. I know for myself, if you met me at 19, I'd be like, hi, my name's Keltie. I'm a science major and basketball player. And that was me. And then suddenly basketball player's not there. I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Keltie. Awkward. You are of no substance. Like, that's what I thought. Like, I'd meet people and be like, I am so embarrassed. I have nothing to say. I can't say I'm like, I used to play basketball. That's lame. And I feel that's just a general feeling. Oh, if you're asking, Keltie, what are you drinking? Well, it seemed only fitting. We're talking about Gen Z and millennials. So what are they obsessed with? Matcha. So I'm drinking a matcha. And just like it's Gen Z and millennials' current obsession, matcha, my current matcha obsession is peak. Now, you guys all know I have a little obsession with coffee. Character flaw. And no, you're never gonna get me to give up coffee. flashback to some reason I have to give up coffee. But moral story is I'd like to every once in a while prove to myself I don't need something every day. And one of my easiest ways to get that swap when I don't want to be having coffee every single day or just replace one of my cups of coffee is I do have matcha. It's delicious, it's warm, it's cool. It's the same vibe. It's the same vibe. And Peak's matcha does contain caffeine and L-theanine, a calming ingredient, which gives me sustained energies. And I know matcha also a lot of people like. If you're someone who gets a lot of jitters, has had a crash for caffeine, this can be a great alternative is trying matcha, and specifically a high grade matcha. And specifically why I love Peak's products and why they stand out is their quadruple toxin screen for purity and use the highest quality of ingredients for effective results. And they're just easier to use. Like even it's easier than a tea bag. The problem with a tea bag is you gotta go put the tea and you gotta wait. You gotta wait like 3 minutes and you're like, I want the tea now. With it being just the powder package, but just boop, it's in. And if you wanna get your hands on Peak's Sun Goddess Matcha, for limited time, get up to 15% off plus a free rechargeable frother and cup when you shop my link, which is peaklife.com/KeltieYT. Thank you, Peak, for sponsoring this video. Now that explains the 2010s, the 2015s, 2018s, and yep, we're coming to the big reason number 3. Lockdowns 2020. Hello, my name's Keltie O'Connor, and about a month ago, my gym closed. There was no gyms to train at. Second, we all really got into hot girl walks. We all just started going on long walks for our mental health, and there was nothing else to do. And I think a lot of people suddenly started going on these walks and started realizing like, oh, I can just run. It was like one of the very few exercises that the average person realized they could do. I think the average person is like, oh, I can go to the gym or I can go for a run. And that's kind of the extent of just like first things that come to mind when you think fitness. 3, we forget it was a respiratory disease. And I do think there suddenly became this awareness universally of like how our health can affect and like protect us from diseases and whatnot. And when you think of respiratory health, you think of cardio health and you think of running. So I think there was a lot of people who were like, oh, I need to like care about my lungs. Insert running. Also during lockdown, no one was spending money on vacations. So people who do have disposable income, I feel had a lot of just extra disposable income put towards health because people just for once had time to focus on their health. And so they bought things like smartwatches, running shoes, expensive training programs. So the other reason there's just this tech integration that started to happen because that was the only way we could really stay connected. And suddenly it was like a way you could have a place to work out. It was either from following workout programs on your computer or TV or on a watch or your phone. And with that, one of the few things that we were able to do together virtually was running. There was a lot of like the marathons got shut down, but you could go do it on your own. Like I know the Lululemon 10K they do every year, you could do that virtually. And so I think it suddenly became something people could train for. They kind of felt they were part of a community while still isolating. Reason number 4, podcasts. While we were in lockdown, we were focusing on our health. And because at that exact time, a lot of health podcasts shot up. I think a lot of people just became hyper-focused. They had the time. And so some podcasts, Rhonda Patrick's, Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, that whole zeitgeist just became so popular. And what's one thing they all say? Let's say it together. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Zone 2 cardio.
Zone 2 cardio. We all know it at this point. They was just reamed down as Zone 2 cardio. And I will say the average person, when they think of cardio, means running. Now, we'll talk more about this, and I've talked about this. There's plenty of ways to get in cardio in Zone 2. You can swim, you can bike, you can dance. But average person, 3, 2, 1, someone tells you cardio, you think running. It's what humans do. We walk and we run. So it makes sense. So with that, hearing a lot of the benefits of Zone 2, people instantly were like, oh, Zone 2, I'll run. Reason number 5, this one breaks my heart, but I'm going to talk about many reasons and this will all make sense at the end. And so I'm going to mention them all of like suspicions I have from many different people because there's a lot of people running from a lot of different demographics. The 90s are back. We knew that all over. And as I said, the 2010s, it was really big and curvy and the glutes, and which we love, but also 90s aesthetic came back in and the lack of better terms, heroin chic. And it almost became for a little bit anti-weightlifting. Now this is really seen with the rise of both Pilates and running. I do feel there was a lot of women specifically, I'm going to talk as a woman's perspective to other women's. I know a lot of you other identify in many ways watch me and I love you too, and so I hope this resonates with you as well. But I noticed there was a lot of women that grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, which was just very toxic diet culture that went to this like weightlifting is like the biggest thing and like very weightlifting and HIIT. Like workouts had to be 100%. You had to lift heavy and you had to burn yourself into the ground. And I feel there's just like a lot of people that got burned out from that, and then their hormones were all out of the place, and that was a lot on social media, like a lot of influencers talking about it. And with that, it almost became like anti-weightlifting because like weightlifting and HIIT training raised their cortisol so much, and that's a whole nother topic which I've talked about actually a lot on like more of my Pilates videos. But with that, I think people started really slowing down. It was like the anti-boss babe era, and then suddenly we're forced to just like do Pilates classes at home and yoga, and suddenly it was like, wow, I can still feel good without just lifting heavy. heavy. And I think people finally got a break and slow down, they feel good. But that doesn't mean weightlifting and sprinting is bad. I think we were just doing too much and we just viewed fitness as only that. And my scare with this is that we went the complete opposite. So suddenly it was like, we can only walk and do Pilates and never lift weights and never sprint. And like with that, I also feel kind of became this like anti-weightlifting boss babe. And so it was a bit more like just cardio, some light runs, hot girl walks, Pilates, and that kind of came in. And then on the flip side, like people just being mentally burnt out from weightlifting, just overing it and want like a different outlet. Also people who maybe didn't fall into that. But with the body types, I hate to even like mention this because like unfortunately women's body shapes are a trend. That's unfair. I think we just, for many different reasons, with the 90s fashion coming back in, the anti-weightlifting, people being burnt out from HIIT, it just seems to be this like transition into like slow girl, Pilates, hot girl walks era. And then I feel because of the hot girl walks and people started running. Does this make sense? Anyways, yeah, but also with the 80s and 90s being back in and not such a negative thing, is running was in the 80s and 90s. I talked to my mom. My mom was a big marathon runner. It's almost like I'm living her life, which I was her age when I was a kid, so it makes sense. This is just a quarter life crisis. I don't know. But the moral story is in the 80s and 90s, that aesthetic is really in. And marathon running was in, just like that style of workout clothes was very like runner. And so that fashion can also ironically influence workout choices, I think. Reason number 6, people's obsession with numbers. One reason I think people are so obsessed with the number on the scale is for the longest time, it was the only metric we have. And it's just kind of like black or white. Your weight's up, your weight's down, your weight's the same. It's like pretty clear and simple. So I think people can really be like, oh, I need to gain weight to be healthier, or I need to lose weight to be healthier. Like it's very black and white. But the more we get into it, there's more a wide variety of numbers to look at. There's our respiratory rate, there's our heart rate, there's our omega-3 levels. Like the more science we get with smartwatches and all that, we're starting to like widen our horizon. And that was one great thing about weightlifting. I think that's one reason weightlifting became really empowering for women, is it was another number to concentrate on. It wasn't just the number on the scale. It was like how much you could lift. I'm getting stronger because, hey, last week I could only curl a 25 pound and this week I can curl a 30 pound. Like it shows your fitness is progressing, but in a way that's not the scale. Now we did that with weightlifting. And the thing about weightlifting, there's newbie gains and there's definitely like a point you see like a lot of progression, and then you kind of hit your max and then you have to do a lot of work just to get the smallest amounts of change. But then running comes along, and running gives that same satisfaction. You can be running a faster speed, you can be running longer. Like it's just very black and white that you're getting in better running shape, and it just gives you that number. And at the end of the day, a lot of humans find satisfaction in that. And it's just a way for people to see their health truly improve away from the scale. Also, just fitness culture coincides with routine culture, and it just becomes a part of people's routine, and there's that sense of accomplishment. I ran 3 times this week. It's just one of those check off things, good for my health, and we have that like satisfaction, and running really pays into that. And at the end of the day, personal growth and achievement. It's cheesy, but when you get a little faster, run a little longer, compete in a race, you just have that like, I did something. And if you just repeatedly say you're gonna do something and you do it, you go confidence, and it's just like great for your mental health. That. And I think running, whether it be races or just improving your running speed and distance, just gives that real sense of accomplishment, and an obsession with numbers that can be negative, which we'll talk about, but an obsession that's not just the number on the scale. Reason number 7, this was kind of just fun, just throwing it out there. Quiet luxury and sports fashion. Now, right now is very that like country club, tennis, quiet luxury styles in, and I love it. I love it. I won't lie. I'm a sucker for it. It just is so chic. Also with the Olympics, like that same like 80s Olympic fashion is in. And with that, running has also become like an aesthetic in itself. Quiet luxury sports aesthetic. It's just the style. Like a lot of us are wearing it. And also I think when things were locked down, when you went on a run was one of the few times you got to like dress up. And I think we just really played into it. I feel running fashion is kind of in terms of like regular fashion outside of running. Just like regular casual clothes have this like running aesthetic to them, down to like sneakers, to just the look of that 80s retro 90s look is really in. And so I think it's just like, yeah, our runs are now fashion show, and it kind of just like aligns with what's in the mainstream. Reason 8, influencers. I feel there was a ripple effect. I think the catalyst was Casey Neistat and him running through New York. And a lot of YouTubers were inspired by Casey Neistat. I was inspired by Casey Neistat. Just ask a YouTuber, just like, who were you inspired by? 85% of the times they'll say Casey. It's just a thing. Anyway, and he was a runner. So I think a lot of us just like saw him running through New York, and there was just this like, I know I had this like, oh, to run through New York like Casey. It's just this like bucket list. At the same time, people like Nick Bare also got really popular in lockdown, and he was one of the first few people that showed running doesn't mean sacrificing all this work you put on. I think so many of us put so much work towards weightlifting over the last few years getting stronger and all that. And then suddenly, but we were always told like running will make us lose our gains. And then suddenly we see Nick Bare and he's like more jacked than any of us. And he's running faster than any of us. And we're like, wait, what? You can do that? And like a lot of influencers were inspired by Nick Bare. And see, like they're like two catalysts that inspired like a whole, and like obviously they inspired a lot of people who don't post online, but they specifically inspired a lot of people that post online. And even I'm gonna use myself as an example. My run streak started as just like a whim. I remember as lockdown, there was limited options and I was like, I'm just gonna run for 30 days, see what happens. And I didn't stop. I didn't stop for 400 days because I can get obsessed about numbers.
Today is the day, run 365.
And I didn't think much of it, but I know I had a couple friends who are also fitness YouTubers or influencers on Instagram or TikTok. And they were like, yeah, no, I saw you going for a run. So I was like, I just had to go for a run one day. And then I know they have a following. So their followers started seeing it. And I'm not saying like me, but I just mean like I was one of many that also fell into this. But like, yeah, I'll go for a run. And then people see me running. I'm like, oh, I'll go for a run. And it was just like a ripple effect, all because of Casey and Nick. Not all cause, but they were just like a major catalyst. And like, I am not responsible for running, but I am one of the people that post a lot about running. And I just know it's crazy. The thing most people have come up to me that I've met in person or messaged me, the number one biggest thing is like, I decided to go on a run because of your video, which I was like, crazy. That's the most common thing. So I think for whatever reason, just the timing was great. It's just this mass ripple effect that happened. Like a lot of people be like, oh yeah, sure, that looks nice. I'm gonna do it too. And also there's a lot of people who are like doing these like intense challenges, like a Lucy Davis and other like amazing runners who are just doing these like crazy ultra marathons and marathons. And like, I feel whenever I saw someone do that, I was like, wow, people are capable of hard things. And it was like seeing people doing crazy hard things, like these ultra marathons that people are documented, just made me even want to like try to push myself out of my comfort zone. So even though I didn't want to do ultra, I signed up for like a half marathon.
Let's go, Keltie! You got this!
Reason number 9 is pretty simple. Recession. Yeah, everything's unaffordable these days, but running is the cheapest, but it's a slippery slope because once you get into running, then you see all the influencers wearing the fancy gear and you buy the fancy gear, and it's not cheap these days because nothing is, but if in terms of the cheapest, it definitely is. You just need a pair of shoes and hopefully some clothes. Reason number 10, the cool factor. Back to Casey and Nick. I remember seeing them and how they documented it. It was badass. It was cool. And just seeing like running in them, like, wow. Versus I won't lie, when I was younger, running to 10 kilometers seemed kind of lame. It was something our parents did. It just didn't have that it factor. You just hear someone went around a marathon, you'd be like, wow, impressive, good for you. I think that was the end of it. It didn't have like a cool factor. And I don't know if it was capitalism. I don't know what happened. Like there's the retro style we look at, so it's cool because it's retro, but like 10 years ago, like running fashion wasn't really in. Like it was just kind of very like basic tank tops and shorts. It was nothing crazy. But I don't know what happened in the last 3 years. Companies caught on and they made things cool, like On Cloud and then Oakley sunglasses and all this. I don't know what happened, but running suddenly got a cool factor and brands jumped on it. They were like, oh, On Cloud, Hookah, New Balance, Asics. They just were like, we're awakened. We're no longer advertising towards like 50-year-olds signing up for a marathon. We're like, we got to target the Gen Z and Millennials. We got to make it look cool so they can take an Instagram photo, and they made us cool stuff. And now I can't stop buying it. Running just has a cool factor, too obnoxious. Sometimes we take it too extreme with our running vests and sunglasses, and yeah, but it has the cool factor, and brands have capitalized, and we're suckers for it. And it's a vicious cycle, and that's why we don't have money. Reason 11, now we're kind of jumping back to what I said at the beginning, but like lack of third places. So there was this lack of third places, and now I realized that was like early 2010s, people just graduating high school, college. Now I think something that a lot of millennials and Gen Z have grabbed a hold of is things like run clubs, gyms. That is our third place. You just sign up and you show up, and eventually you find familiar places, but it's like one of those places we can go after work and school and just run into people aside from the nightclub. Because also in this very time we're all concentrating on our health, there's been a real shift in sober living, which is a video I'm working on. But like one thing I feel are both Gen Z and millennials don't have the culture of is like the local pub. We don't have the after work, go for a drink, your regular, like that third place. It's just on average, obviously there's a lot of people that do, and drinking is very personal. I just mean compared to our parents and older generations, I don't see this as much of a, oh, I'm just gonna hang out at the local pub after work culture. Because a lot of us are like, we're not going to drink on a Thursday. Like there's just been a bigger shift towards sober living and just not as many people drinking. And so it's kind of like we've swapped that with gyms and run clubs. And I truly hope this is like a rise of like more accessible, lack of better terms, country clubs. Like I just have this vision of like tennis clubs with like swimming pool, paddle, workplaces, just gyms. And there's like this one in Miami, Anytime Fitness, but a bit more affordable gyms that provide you like co-working places, a little cafe, different kinds of sports. And I'm hoping this push, because there is things like country clubs and all that, but obviously most of us we can't afford a house, let alone a country club right now. But I'm just hoping with this like shift towards sober living, a lot of more of those establishments open up, and gyms that aren't just a place with weights and cardio equipment, like they're really a place to be active, and third places for us. And right now we're fitting that need with run clubs. It's a place you can go on the weekend, meet people, and yeah, it kind of just took off. Like running's cool people probably running. Let's go to a run club and meet cool people. Like that's just kind of what's happening. And also just like a sense of community. If you've done a run, then you know, like an actual like race, not just a run, a race, there's like this community aspect, almost as like a music festival vibe, and you just feel like you're a part of a community. And I feel running is a community anyone can join. As simple as like you're running down the path and you just do the runner wave, like hey, just like you feel you're a part of something. And I feel that's saying our generation's social isolation and loneliness is an epidemic, and it's one of those ways anyone can just go be a part of something bigger. And leading off to that third place is this reason 12. It's replaced dating apps and nightclubs. Not fully, obviously there's still dating apps and nightclubs, but with more people turning to sober living and more people just wanting to meet people outside the club and not feeling they want to drink just to meet someone, is they can sign up for a race or go to these run clubs and meet people. And with that meeting people, a lot of singles get together, and I feel that's been a ripple effect. It became a joke and a meme on TikTok, and now it's real. Like you never know who you're gonna meet at a nightclub, but like you're meeting someone at a run club, you're like, at least they're into running. You know, they care somewhat about their health, and so they probably have some good merit, and there's just something about that. I don't know if it was a joke to go meet people at run clubs because there's always like hot looking people there, and now we're like, oh no, like everyone knows now. And so now it's like a unspoken rule. It's just a massive dating thing. Reason number 13, mental health. Sorry, I had to get sappy. Obviously, mental health is really big for millennials and Gen Zs. I feel we're the first two generations really to like not question it. We're like, yeah, of course, mental health is one of the factors of health. And with that, I feel a lot of us have realized running, what makes it great is you work on both your physical health and mental health. One, you're off your phone. It's one of the few things, I guess, unless you're at a treadmill, but like you can't be on your phone. You can't be scrolling Instagram while you're running. And also it builds you that confidence. There's something about you saying, I'm gonna go and run 5 kilometers, and you actually go out and run 5 kilometers, just like holding yourself accountable, that feeling of confidence is like nothing else. And I feel running more than anything does it. Because like the gym, you go and you kind of work out a class, but if you tell yourself, I'm gonna go run 8 kilometers, and you actually run the 8 kilometers, just that, and you repeatedly do it, that confidence builder, like that is confidence right there. Saying you're gonna do something and doing it. And I feel running is like one of the best things for it. And I feel like even though you get physical gains, it's like the mental gains. And just like you said, it's almost movement meditation. It's just you and your thoughts and some music maybe, or a podcast, or just for you crazies out there, just you and nothing. It's like, how? You're mentally stronger than me. And a quick, actually 14 reasons. It's fun. A race is a music festival vibe. A run club is kind of like the same vibes of going out for dinner with your friends and drinks are brewing, tables are coming up and talking to you. That's what like a run club vibe is. Like you're with a little group and you talk to other groups, and it's fun. And I also want to vomit that I just said running's fun. 18-year-old Keltie just vomited. But what's next? Like we said, we talked a lot about like the trends. What do we think is next? It went from the like BBG hit weightlifting era to at-home workouts to like now the running and Pilates era. But what's next? I look back at my mom and what I remember her girlfriends and people she worked with, because she's a personal trainer, fitness group instructor. Like what was the biggest complaints of people in their 40s, 60s and above? And a lot were runners. And a lot were like, oh, I used to be a runner, but then I blew up my knee. And so I'm going to predict that's what's next. I think just like how there's a bit of an anti-weightlifting, I do think there's going to be a bit of an anti-running movement in a couple of years, but it doesn't mean running's out. There's an exception. I think we're smarter. I think we know a bit more of the science. We know like this hybrid athlete approach, I think is a great realization, but realizing we also have to strength train. We have to do our mobility. And so I really hope it's like injury prevention is the next thing, and just like having a more well-balanced. And so unfortunately, I think the next thing is you're going to hear a lot of people who like got into running and because everyone else got into it and they actually hate it, and then they might be injured. So I do think there's going to be a wave of that coming soon. But with that, that doesn't mean you should stop running. I think running is an amazing part of your routine and a way to get in cardio and have community. And I think we just all are smarter and have to be conscious, so we just have a bit more of a balanced approach. And finally, maybe running isn't in. Maybe we just hit that third life crisis of 20, 30, and 40-year-olds that just get into running. Is this just something that happens? You hit 25 and you have to run a marathon. Like, why is that human instinct? Is it even in? Is it just that we're the first generation on social media hitting these ages? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel social media has been on for a little bit, and then we all just were hitting our mid-20s, 30s, 40s, signing up for half marathons, and ironically, kind of the first generations to be fully on social media. So it just became on social media. I don't know if we're all going through a quarter life crisis or it's actually in. I don't know. We need Gen Alpha to come up here and be like, you guys look lame running. Or if they're like, cool, running influencers. Like that's the barometer. Because I used to look at my parents and be like, oh, marathon, that's lame. Now I look at someone running a marathon, I'm like, oh my God, you are the coolest person I know. Congrats to everyone that just ran the marathon in Edmonton, my hometown. You all, that was my whole news feed, was it? And I was just like eating it up. I'm like, yes, like. That's just, so if you're Gen Alpha, please comment on Gen Z and Millennials. Is running actually in? Or are we just at that age you sign up for a marathon? I don't know. And you know what? It's not one of these reasons. It's a combo. Everyone had their own unique reasons, but I think what it's in. It's a fun way to see your health improve. It's confidence in yourself. It's mental health. It's community. It was all we had. It's cheap. And so yeah, that's why it's in. Like when you really break it down to all those things, it's like, how could running not be in? It's kind of like the perfect storm. And let's just be smart and do our strength training and mobility and not overtrain so running doesn't become in. I think a lot of us are in a good place. We do a little Pilates, we do some weights, and we do some running. Let's just stay there. Please, if you're watching this, you're one of my people, you get it. Let's just stay here. I like where we're at. A balanced workout. Please. Anyways, I'd love to hear down in the comments why you got into running, or if you're not into running yet, is there something that's stopping you? If you're like, no, I'll never get into running because point blank. Or on the flip side, is there a reason that's tempted you to get into running? I'd love to hear that, and just continue on the conversation down in the comments. But most importantly than all this, have a great day. Go pet a dog. Love you guys. Bye.